apologies for the slight delay in starting. Welcome to our GSMA mAgri webinar on innovations in mobile IoT and big data for climate resilience. My name is Jenny Prosser and I'm the Senior Insights Manager for the mAgri program at GSMA Mobile for Development. And I'm joined today by two other members of our team. I have with me Daniele, who's our Insights Director, and Abi Fatih-Job, our Knowledge Manager. So before we start, I have a few quick housekeeping notes. This webinar will last approximately 1 hour, and we'll have some time for questions at the end. During the webinar, you'll be able to post questions using the chat functionality, so please do ask questions. If we're not able to answer all of them today, we'll endeavour to follow up with you afterwards by email. So if you have any technical difficulties, you can also use the chat functionality to let us know. And I'd also like to add that the webinar will be recorded and we'll be making that recording available on the GSMA mAgri website afterwards. So in coming up with the concept for this webinar, we have posed a few questions that we'd like to try to answer today. Firstly, we'll look at the types of services strengthening the climate resilience of rural populations that can benefit most from mobile IoT and big data technologies. Secondly, we'll discuss the technology assets that the private sector, including mobile operators, can offer to improve weather monitoring and forecasting in developing countries. Next, we'll evaluate which business models can support the creation of viable public-private partnerships in this area. Finally, we'll provide a case study on Ericsson weather data, which is one of the latest innovations in the field of mobile IoT and big data for climate resilience. We'll be joined today by Edgar Kasenni, who is the head of IoT and emerging business for Africa at Ericsson. And he'll tell us more about the pilot project they're currently running in Rwanda, which aims to monitor rainfall in real time using a new measurement technique that uses mobile network microlinks as rain sensors. So before we start answering those specific questions, let me hand over to my colleague, Daniele, who's going to take a few moments to quickly introduce the activities of the GSMA mAgri program and provide a little bit of context.
Okay, thank you, Jenny, for the introduction. My name is Daniele. I'm the Insights Director in the mAgri program at the GSMA Mobile for Development. Hi everyone. Before we start, let me spend a few words on our program and what we do. So the mAgri program, Mobile Agriculture Program at the GSMA M4D, is a non-for-profit, is part of GSMA Mobile for Development as a non-for-profit organization. We work with the mobile industry to identify opportunities and deliver mobile technology-based innovations with socio-economic impact. The mission of the mAgri program is to advance the productivity and the profitability of smallholder farmers through scalable and commercial mobile services. So to give you a bit of an idea of the work that we've done over the past few years, since we started, we have supported 12 projects, mostly of them mobile operator-led, and we know there's a few mobile operators joining us today. These services have been targeting information via mobile phones to about 40 million smallholder farmers across Asia and Africa. These information services are what we refer to as agricultural value-added services, or AgriVAS. They include agronomic advisory, market information, as well as weather forecasts targeting smallholder farmer communities. More recently, we've been looking at digitizing agricultural value chains and have started new engagement projects with mobile operators to develop more kind of enterprise solutions as opposed to direct-to-consumer services like the AgriVAS model for the agricultural vertical. So what's the plan for the coming months? Over the next few months, the idea is to continue the work that we do by convening the industry and sharing experience and learning with industry practitioners. We have a knowledge sharing program whereby we publish a large range of resources such as case studies, market reports, toolkits that present best practices for service design, for business models and go-to-market strategies. As I mentioned before, we directly engage with service providers by offering them direct support and partnership brokering. So over the last 18 months, we have started a number of engagements to support mobile operator-led agricultural digitization initiatives in Africa. So let's go back to the main topic of this webinar, as Jenny mentioned. So we have been very focused on agricultural value services. And in relation to this topic, we first published a report entitled Weather Forecasting and Monitoring, Mobile Solutions for Climate Resilience. Obviously, weather information and weather forecast is a key component of this agricultural value-added services we've been working on. We published this study because the study that we published originally in 2016, the idea was to understand better best practices and best models for the delivery of weather forecasts to smallholder farmers, because we really understood the need of farmers, from farmers, for good, accurate, reliable, and granular weather information. So this report is still available to download, by the way, if you're interested, and explores a range of use cases for weather advisory, but we also look at weather index insurance, and we also look at the role of mobile IoT and big data in service creation for better weather forecasting and monitoring, which is the topic of today's webinar. So as we continue working on the role of mobile technology for strengthening climate resilience, our plan for the next few months is to release a further publication in the first quarter of 2019 that will look at innovation in mobile IoT and big data for climate resilience. So let's frame the problem. Let's start by highlighting the impact that climate change is having on developing countries, where nearly 500 million smallholder farmers rely on income generating from agriculture for their livelihoods. So as you can see from this map, which comes from the Global Climate Risk Index, which is an index that measures the global impact of weather-related loss events such as storms, floods, heat waves, developing countries are the most affected by weather-related disasters. If we look at the map from this index, we will find out that countries such as Honduras, Haiti, Myanmar, all developing countries, have been the most affected globally in recent years. So the agricultural sector clearly endures the greatest losses and damages from these extreme weather events, and these have long-lasting social impact, social and economic consequences, right? So recent research from FAO, from the Food and Agricultural Organization, has shown that the agricultural sector absorbs nearly 1/4 of all damage and losses caused by natural disasters. So this is really severely impacting the livelihoods of rural communities globally. Now, mobile technology, as we mentioned, plays a key role in helping rural communities in developing countries to mitigate, adapt, and respond to the effects of climate change. So at the GSMA, mAgri, in collaboration with our colleagues in the Mobile for Humanitarian Innovation team, we have developed this framework that you can see here in this slide that showcases the different ways in which mobile technology can be used to strengthen the resilience of rural populations and of populations affected by crisis. So in this context, if we start from the top, mitigation refers to longer-term actions to slow down climate change by decreasing carbon emissions in the atmosphere. So use cases that we can consider for this area are, for example, pay-as-you-go utilities, use cases for mobile technology. Let's think here of, for example, solar panels and energy-efficient cook stoves. This is an area of work where our colleagues in the mobile utilities team at the GSMA have plenty of expertise. As another use case, we can also look at environmental monitoring, for example, machine learning applications that direct and alert authorities for deforestation incidents. Then if we move into this framework, if we dig deeper into this framework and we look at adaptation to climate change, or more strictly climate resilience, What we mean here is the role of mobile technology to help rural community adjust and cope with the effects of climate change. Possible digital use cases in this area include a range of information services that can be delivered via mobile, like agronomic advice, as we mentioned before, including weather forecasts. Then if we move into more strictly mobile IoT applications, we have precision agriculture. We can think of smart irrigation systems, livestock fishery management solutions, like IoT solution for monitoring the health of livestock, IoT supply chain and logistic solutions such as systems that help farmers monitoring warehouses, which obviously in view of the effects of climate change is becoming more and more important. If we think, for example, of the risk of losing crops in warehouses for inefficient storing. Then, of course, related to adaptation, we can look at the role of mobile to strengthen financial inclusion and as well financial preparedness, I would say, particularly when we look at insurance. So how mobile can help increase financial preparedness of farming communities to deal with the effect of climate change. Here, the key opportunity is to digitize weather index insurance or crop insurance products, and by digitizing these kind of products to make them more widely available and accessible to smallholder farmers. And obviously, if we look at mobile operator assets, we're looking at the digitization of insurance. Finally, response and recovery. Responsive recovery refers to actions that help communities prepare for and deal with the immediate effects of crises such as droughts or flooding. We probably skip to the next slide, but I'm still covering the different use cases here in this framework. I will go more into the details of the different use cases and services in the next slides. Apologies about that. As I was mentioning, when we look at response and recovery, here we refer to action that help communities prepare for and deal with the immediate effect of crises such as drought, flooding. Digital use cases in this area include flooding alerts, like mobile IoT solution deployed in areas prone to floods for early warning system. Drought prediction, such as big data solution to map real-time conditions and predict severe weather events. We can also look at population movement tracking using mobile operator data to plan relief interventions or data collection tools on food security, like the use of mobile money, tools to collect nutritional data in communities at risk of famine. So while we have identified several important digital or mobile technology use cases in all of these areas, our focus, I would say, in the mAgri program is primarily on adaptation solutions that can help smallholder farmers become more resilient to changing weather patterns and manage the risk associated with climate-related shocks. So our colleagues in the Mobile for Humanitarian Innovation team at the GSMA look at climate change and food security as one of the 5 key areas of focus and response and recovery. So it's worth mentioning that these teams are currently carrying out research and on-the-ground projects to explore the role that mobile can play in this area and test as well emerging business models. Now, if we go to the next slide, the idea here is, now that we have presented this framework to identify where mobile technology really can add value and can contribute to strengthening climate resilience of rural communities. Here we have a few examples. I mentioned equipment monitoring, which is the most common use case for IoT in developing countries. Here we include things like connected pumps and connected drip irrigation systems. Equipment monitoring can play an important role in ensuring that precious resources such as water, in particular, are used efficiently. An example of this is Nano Ganesh, a service that you might have heard from India. This is a mobile-based remote control system for agricultural water pumps, which can be activated and deactivated by simple SMS. So the benefit here for the farmer of using a system like this is that through the system, a farmer can really use water efficiently, and therefore can become more resilient to climate change. In the case of Nano Ganesh, just to give you an example, the company claims that the connected pump in India can help farmers save up to 1,000 liters of water per day. When it comes to weather monitoring and forecasting, which is the main focus as we will develop and expand further in this webinar, In this area, really, we're seeing a lot of innovation when it comes to mobile IoT and big data. Here we just mention a couple of examples. Arable is a company that has developed low-cost solar-powered IoT devices, which provide granular crop and weather monitoring data in real time, and can improve crop models and bias as well, and correct, let's say, meteorological products. Looking at remote sensing, geodata from satellites, here we mention as an example Ignitia, which is a company that leverages geodata from satellites to provide granular forecasts. They have partnered with mobile operators. They're already working with mobile operators in West Africa to provide to smallholder farmers highly localized weather forecasts via SMS. Then moving to precision agriculture, we refer to remotely observing, measuring, and monitoring crops and equipment, and using real-time data on weather, soil, air quality to generate analytical models that can help farmers be more efficient. This application can help farmers make more precise decisions about planting, growing, harvesting, transportation of crops. All of this can obviously lead to better price points and more efficiencies in the supply chain. IBM has estimated that 90% of all crop losses are weather related. So this is where precision agriculture becomes very important. Predicting weather measurement to the application of precision agriculture can really reduce crop damage up to 25%. According to IBM. Precision agriculture obviously is more commonly developed in markets that are developed in developed markets, but examples of this application have emerged. Just as an example, Aware is an agri-software company who collects over 7 billion data points every day to help transform agricultural decision making for smallholder farmers. I won't talk much about livestock and fishery management and supply chain and logistics, which we mentioned before as very important use cases as well of mobile IoT and big data. Here you have some examples, but to bring the discussion again closer to the focus of this webinar, I would say that alongside weather monitoring and forecasting, probably the most relevant use case when we talk about mobile IoT and big data to strengthen climate resilience of rural communities, weather index insurance. So weather index insurance is a relatively new approach to insurance provision for rainfed agriculture. These kind of insurance products cover against weather calamities such as drought, floods, and pay out benefits for loss of assets and investments on the basis of a predetermined rainfall based index on historical weather data. So mobile technology offers the opportunity to digitize the whole service creation and service provision of weather index insurance by automating the transmission of data collection, by geolocating the user services by geolocating the user of the service via the mobile phone, and of course by using mobile money for payments. So in turn, digital products offers as well the potential to scale this kind of services, and we will see later in the webinar an example of how this can be achieved. One example that we mentioned here is Acre in sub-Saharan Africa, which have worked, it's a weather index insurance product that has been launched in partnership with a mobile operator, Safaricom, and focuses on the maize value chain and failed germination of maize. So in this slide, I will finish just by highlighting in this first section to set the scene the opportunity for mobile operators really to generate new products and services on the back of these emerging technologies that support the resilience of rural communities. The idea of this slide really is to populate the framework that we presented, that I just presented before, along mitigation, adaptation, and responses with the different use cases that we've seen emerging, and really identify what are the opportunities for mobile operators to generate some revenue through these use cases, but also to develop some cost-saving efficiencies. So if we look at adaptation in particular, highlighted in yellow, really most of the work that we've done over the past few years has been on end-user products and services, direct-to-consumers or business-to-consumer type of products. The agricultural value-added services that I mentioned before have proved to be an opportunity for mobile operators to generate new revenue, but also to increase the loyalty of customers, of smallholder farmers in rural communities. Of course, when we look at adaptation again, which is where we focus mostly as the mAgri program at the GSMA, and we look at enterprise solution, then we look as well at IoT, big data and IoT solution. And here you can see how the use cases that I've just presented and the examples fit very well here under an adaptation strategy for rural communities. And the opportunity here is for mobile operators to develop business-to-business or enterprise solutions targeting the agricultural sector. Then when we come to the opportunity of mobile operators to leverage in data, this is another revenue opportunity really, but it's more related to service creation as opposed to service provision. The idea really is to leverage key data points, and Jenny will talk more about this next. Key data points that mobile operators have, mobile IoT and big data, but also location-based services for accurate location, which is fundamental, for example, for forecasting, to have a very good and accurate forecast. And other data points that can help improve the quality in the first place of weather information. When it comes to OPEX savings and to reducing costs for mobile operators, of course, there are many applications around the mitigation and response in particular, whereby operators can develop efficiencies. So I will now hand you over to Jenny to answer or to deal with the questions that of this webinar, starting from the first one. So over to you, Jenny.
Thanks, Daniele. So let's take a look at our first question for today. Which services strengthening the climate resilience of the rural sector can most benefit from mobile IoT and big data? To answer this question, we need to first understand where mobile IoT and big data can add unique value. Farmers desperately need access to accurate and localized weather forecasts to enable them to make key decisions across the production cycle, from when to plant to whether to apply fertilizer to when to harvest. However, climate change has made weather patterns harder to predict, and extreme events such as droughts and floods have become more frequent and severe. As a result, it is more important than ever to better monitor and predict weather patterns. While reliable and localized weather information is as needed as ever, weather data is scarcely available and of poor quality. National meteorological agencies in developing countries face a serious capacity challenge in terms of both availability of technology and of skills to generate even a generic weather forecast. Weather forecasts are created by supercomputers using data primarily provided by satellites. However, ground-based measurements from other sources, such as weather stations and radars, are required for calibration and to create localized forecasts. The World Meteorological Organization estimates that there are just over 1,100 active weather stations in the whole of Africa. What's more, the number of stations has halved over the last 30 years due to inadequate government funding and the challenges and costs of maintaining them. To provide basic weather services, there would need to be at least 12,000 weather stations operating across the continent. Radars are very expensive and so prohibitive for the vast majority of developing countries to use. 40 countries in Africa have no weather radar at all. Without accurate weather data and without efficient weather modelling techniques, developing countries will only be able to generate substandard forecasts. What's more, it will not be possible to create services that strengthen the climate resilience of rural populations, nor to provide effective early warning systems to protect smallholder farmers from climate shocks. So this is where mobile IoT technologies, such as low-cost sensors and automated weather stations, can add unique value by helping to provide the accurate local measurements that are fundamental to creating reliable weather forecasts and weather index insurance. These new data sets from IoT technologies can be combined with traditional data sets, and the power of big data can be harnessed to analyse them and generate more accurate forecasts. Under the mNutrition initiative, the GSMA and Magri programme worked with mobile operator Ooredoo in Myanmar to launch the SitePo Weather app for smallholder farmers. From our experience of launching and scaling mobile agriculture information services such as this, we've seen that weather content is highly valued by smallholder farmers. Given the prevalence of rain-fed agriculture, rainfall forecasts are particularly important for both long-term planning and day-to-day decision-making. With advance notice about heavy rain, farmers can also take steps to reduce post-harvest losses if crops need drying. What's more, rainfall forecasts can play an important role in predicting pest outbreaks, allowing farmers to take preventative actions. As we'll discuss in more detail later, mobile network data can also be leveraged to create rainfall measurements, including the historic measurements which are needed to create these weather index insurance products. So let's move on to our second question. What are the technology assets that the private sector, including mobile operators, can offer to improve weather monitoring and forecasting in developing countries? Together with innovations in satellite technology and the emergence of low-cost mini-satellites, mobile IoT and big data represent the most innovative areas in weather technologies applied to the needs of developing nations. A key development in this space is the emergence of low-cost connected weather stations, which are increasingly being deployed at base station sites for security and access to power. This presents a strategic opportunity for mobile operators to leverage their infrastructure, intelligence, and technical maintenance capacity to support weather monitoring and observation systems. The ubiquity of mobile coverage in developing countries ensures protection and connectivity for the transmission of the data collected on the ground to the cloud. What's more, the lowering CAPEX and OPEX required due to the decreasing cost of weather sensors means that stations can be installed for as little as $10,000. Thanks to the UNDP's CERDA programme, many governments across Africa have chosen to adopt this leapfrog technology. For example, in Liberia, the government has recently entered into a unique public-private partnership with Earth Networks, a leading private sector weather service provider, and Orange, the local mobile operator, to install and maintain 11 automated weather stations. This system provides a real-time platform to capture, analyse and communicate weather information gathered through the automated weather stations, which capture data about everything from lightning and rainfall to temperature and humidity. While there is a strategic opportunity for operators to install connected weather stations, their deployment represents a non-traditional approach to generating local observations, which is not in line with strict World Meteorological Organization standards. With that being said, comparison studies between data obtained from cell phone towers and from WMO-approved sites indicate that they are able to provide reliable data for the main meteorological parameters, such as temperature, wind, and rain. Another key asset that mobile operators can offer is the ability to geolocate users at the farm level, using GPS or even in a 2G environment using cell ID and triangulation techniques. This is of particular relevance in tropical countries where weather patterns can vary largely within short distances, and a weather forecast is only relevant when highly localized. Ignitia, a social enterprise based in Ghana, have partnered with mobile operators across West Africa to provide farmers with GPS-specific weather forecasts by SMS. Using a short code, USSD, farmers are able to subscribe to the service to receive highly localized daily, monthly, and seasonal forecasts, and pay just 2 cents a day. In markets where GPS is not common due to the low penetration of smartphones, mobile operators are able to leverage their network intelligence to provide precise location data for granular localized weather forecasts and digital weather index insurance products. In a 2G environment, mobile operators can use cell ID techniques that identify each base station or sector of a base station with a location area code. By knowing the location of the nearest base station, operators can obtain the approximate location of the user at virtually no cost. A more accurate method to retrieve location data is by triangulation techniques, which use location data of the 2 base stations closest to the user. But this method does require the deployment of location-based software, which can be costly. In Kenya, Safaricom uses triangulation to obtain customer location data for Acre, the digital micro-insurance product that we discussed earlier. So by sharing location data with partner service providers, such as weather forecast providers, agribusinesses, or insurers, mobile operators can increase the value of mobile services in rural areas. Another key development in the field of mobile IoT and big data for climate resilience is the potential to leverage data from the mobile network to monitor rainfall in near real time by employing a new measurement technique that uses mobile network microwave links as rain sensors. Commercial microwave links, or CML, are almost everywhere you can find mobile base stations. Globally, there are about 4 million microwave links in operation. Thanks to an open source algorithm, which was initially developed by Wageningen University, each and every one of those links can act both as a mobile broadband transmitter and as a rain gauge, detecting if and how much rain has fallen. The basic principle behind the algorithm is that rainfall attenuates microwave link signals. By analysing these microwave signal loss patterns, you can therefore measure rainfall. The following image of the Netherlands demonstrates the accuracy of using CML data for rainfall measurements in comparison to traditional measurement methods such as radars and gauges. As mobile operators often store CML data to monitor the stability of their networks, there is no additional infrastructure cost required to leverage this technique, as the network already exists. This kind of opportunistic sensing is part of a broader trend where sensors are used to monitor environmental variables which they have not specifically been designed for. As a result, it is worth noting that these observations are seen as another non-traditional approach to weather monitoring, which is not in line with WMO standards, the same as observations from automated weather stations on cell phone towers. The use of commercial microwave links data is an innovative area of research which can add value to weather monitoring and forecasting services in developing countries, particularly in relation to rainfall monitoring, flood forecasting, drought monitoring, and ground validation of satellite-based rainfall products. In particular, it has the potential to provide highly accurate, low-cost, ground-based measurements in data-sparse regions with very limited availability of rainfall data from other sensors. While some companies such as Ignitia have succeeded in providing accurate forecasts in developing countries using mainly satellite data, there are limitations to relying on satellite data alone. Indeed, the merging of rainfall data from different sources will often yield the best estimates. By harnessing the power of big data to process and analyse different weather data sets, weather service providers will be able to further improve the accuracy of their forecasts. Mobile operators can therefore provide a valuable source of high-resolution rainfall information by sharing CML data, which can complement traditional in-situ measurement devices such as rain gauges and remote sensors, weather radars and satellites. CML datasets have already been provided by operators in over 18 countries, including Pakistan, Kenya and Burkina Faso, and have validated the algorithm's potential to provide rainfall observations. However, further experimentation is now required to develop real-time CML-based rainfall products and apply CML data to agricultural use cases, including weather adaptive agronomic advice services, crop monitoring research, and weather index insurance products. Two notable projects have recently received funding in this area. In Kenya, Cornell University and the International Food Policy Research Institute were one of the winners of the CGIAR 2018 Inspire Challenge and will receive funding to estimate rainfall and crop production monitoring and improve the design of rainfall-based index insurance. In Rwanda, Ericsson are carrying out a pilot in partnership with the Swedish Meteorological and Hydrological Institute and the Rwandan Meteorological Agency and one of the country's leading mobile operators to launch the first countrywide rollout of their microwave link solution, Ericsson Weather Data. We'll hear more about this in our case study later. The private sector has also started to use CML measurements. Just this month, ClimaCell, a Boston-based startup that uses mobile phone and IoT data for short-term hyperlocal weather forecasting, raised $45 million in Series B funding. ClimaCell combined data from new weather sensing technologies such as microwave links with the best data sets from traditional sensors such as satellites and radars to provide minute-by-minute weather observations. Their current products serve customers across both traditional and emerging industries, including aviation, automotive, shared mobility, and utilities. While today, ClimaCell has largely focused on providing forecasts for clients in developed markets, they plan to use part of their recent funding to expand their international operations into developing countries such as India, and are working on providing alerts to notify communities about possible flash flood conditions. So to summarise, the World Bank estimates that improved weather, climate and weather observation and forecasting could lead to up to $30 billion per year in increases in global productivity and up to $22 billion per year in reduced asset losses. As we've seen in the previous few slides, mobile operators can leverage their assets to help both create and disseminate accurate weather forecasts. So just take a quick moment to ask you to continue to send in your questions as we're monitoring the chat functionality. So thank you for all the questions received so far. Mobile operators can also play a key role in enabling digital weather index insurance through geolocation and mobile money. By leveraging their technology assets, operators are able to reduce the transaction cost per farmer for index insurance. Digital weather index insurance products therefore offer great scalability potential to reach smallholder farmers in developing countries that have developed mobile money ecosystems. However, one of the greatest barriers to developing index insurance products is access to reliable long-term data to base agricultural insurance indices on. For index insurance products to be affordable and accurate for smallholder farmers, 10 to 20 years of historical rainfall or yield data is required. Commercial microwave links therefore show great potential to provide the historic data needed to develop these kinds of products. However, as with other microinsurance products, weather index insurance is difficult to explain and sell to farmers. This means that there is a need to bundle insurance products with other value-added services delivered through mobile, such as weather forecasts and agronomic advice. It takes considerable time and effort to ensure farmers understand the product they are purchasing and have appropriate expectations of what the insurance can and cannot offer. Operators do not necessarily need to be the implementers of digital weather index insurance, but they can be strategic partners in delivering the product. Benefits for operators' involvement include increased brand awareness and loyalty, increased value for rural customers, increased mobile money transaction volumes, and potentially increased SMS usage. So let's take a look at our third and final question. What business models can support the creation of viable public partnerships in this area? So as we've discussed, mobile technology is becoming more and more crucial to bridge the data gap in weather monitoring and forecasting. Subsequently, public-private partnerships between national meteorological agencies, commercial weather service providers, and mobile operators will be increasingly required to complement existing infrastructure, generate new data, and eventually improve weather services. Undoubtedly, a key challenge in this space is to identify business and operating models that can support viable public-private partnerships for data generation, supply, and sharing. The Global Weather Enterprise is an international framework that aims to stimulate and facilitate access and exchange for both public and private sources of data. Supported by the World Meteorological Organization, part of the Global Weather Enterprise's focus is to identify business models for the sustainability of public and private data services. From the mobile operator's perspective, there are a number of potential different business and operating models that could be developed. It's worth noting that as this is a nascent opportunity, business models are still emerging, most likely based on revenue share agreements. So let's take a moment to look at three different approaches. In the first model on the left, the mobile network operator acts as a data provider and generates revenue by simply sharing their raw CML data with a third party who can refine and process it and then either sell the refined data as rainfall measurements to another agency, such as the National Hydrometeorological Service, or a private sector weather forecasting company, or potentially add value to it themselves by creating their own services, such as weather forecasts, which they can then sell to the private sector. For our second model, on the right, let's imagine we have a mobile operator with an agri-VAS service that includes weather forecasts. In this instance, the operator again acts as a data provider by sharing their raw CML data with a third party who can process it and apply the algorithm to generate rainfall measurements, which are then shared with a private sector weather forecasting company, in the likes of IBM, or a social enterprise like Ignitia, who could use the rainfall measurements to create a forecast. This forecast is then provided to the MNO to use in their agri-VAS. In the third model at the bottom, the MNO becomes a micro-insurance provider. In this model, they share their raw CML data with a third party who can refine it, and then share it with reinsurers who can use the data to determine the risk for weather index insurance products. The insurer would then get the weather data from the reinsurer and offer digital micro-insurance products to farmers through the MNO. To conclude, it's only put through the formation of new and effective partnerships between different stakeholders, such as national meteorological agencies, commercial weather service providers, and mobile operators, will it be possible to generate the raw data necessary, share it efficiently, and eventually create the services that will make developing nations more climate resilient and bring accurate weather forecasts to the last mile. So now it's time to look in more depth at one of the latest innovations in mobile IoT and big data for climate resilience. We're delighted to be joined today by Edgar Kasenni, who is the head of IoT and emerging business for Africa at Ericsson. So welcome, Edgar.
Hello, can you hear me?
Daniele, yes, we can hear you. Welcome.
Very good.
Daniele and I
It's a pleasure to be here.
So we're delighted to interview you today, and as we mentioned at the start of the webinar, Ericsson have developed a solution called Ericsson Weather Data, which monitors rainfall in real time by using existing microwave links in the mobile network. So Edgar, perhaps you can start by giving us an overview of the pilot and explain to us what we can see in the following image.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here once again. I think you guys have quite eloquently covered a lot of the possibilities of reusing microwave infrastructure in an innovative way to provide real-time weather forecasts or real-time weather data that can actually impact a number of areas, especially the agricultural sector, which is very big on the continent. I don't know if you can hear me clearly. Can you hear me clearly?
You're in Kampala, aren't you? Maybe there's a little bit of an echo on the line.
Is there an echo?
It's okay. It's okay. It's fine.
Okay, sorry about that. I had to travel. But just building on to what a lot of the colleagues of the GSMA have been covering, I think we're very excited to have the opportunity to start to put this into practice. So what you see on the map is the distribution of microwave links across Rwanda. The interesting thing about Ericsson Weather Data and a lot of similar technologies is that microwave links cover about 80% of 90% of the surface area. So you can measure weather information or weather data at this point, rain data, to a fairly good spatial resolution, which gives you quite an accurate view of what's happening in a specific country, specifically around Rwanda, given a lot of the microclimates and the demographics and the geography of that country. EWD, Ericsson Weather Data, can actually provide quite a lot of improvements to a lot of the data that they already collect for microinsurance or weather-based index insurance products and many other solutions. So what we're doing in Rwanda is that we're working with MTN, who is a very close partner of ours, and we are just in the process, as I speak, of integrating this pilot solution where we will over this upcoming rainy season implement the Ericsson Weather Data solution, as was covered in the quite eloquently in the introduction. Basically, the solution reuses the transmit and receive power levels in microwave links, and these management systems are fed into a software algorithm that Ericsson has developed together with our partner from Sweden, SMHI, and that outputs rain data. we're working very closely with microinsurance and insurance companies in the country, and with Rwanda Meteorology Agency to validate this data that we're going to collect for the first time using our EWD solution in Rwanda. And Rwanda is an exciting market for many reasons, and there are quite a few reasons why we chose Rwanda for the pilots. Amongst which, it's obviously a very, very innovative country and very good, very quick to adopt ICT solutions. But it's also has a highly densely populated, a very dense population, and agriculture is quite a big part of the economy. Close to about 50% of the country's land is used for agriculture, and that employs close to 70% of the population. So it's a key part of the sector. And as was explained, weather can have an adverse effect on agricultural products. And if we have a way, an innovative way to in real time understand the weather pattern solutions, and both provide warning or early-based warning systems, or very accurate index-based solutions, which the current weather collection methods, as was explained, are not as accurate as we believe EWD can be. I think what's also very important, apart from the technology, and I think a lot of the call to technology was explained, was that we also find this quite exciting, as it's both an innovative way for existing mobile operators to provide and new innovative service reusing existing infrastructure. And the fascinating thing about EWD is that there isn't a need to add any new infrastructure to the network. You can reuse existing microwave links that today provide very seamless and very efficient mobile communication signals, and reuse that to provide quite an innovative solution in microweather. I think let me stop there. Jenny and team, and maybe we can have a discussion or have questions.
Sure, thank you, Edgar. It's Daniele here from GSMA. So it's very interesting to hear about the work that you're doing, and you mentioned obviously the relevance of weather index insurance. We talked, Jenny and I talked about this as a low-hanging fruit, if you want, as a use case that perhaps can most benefit from microwave links. What about the business model for microinsurance? How do you think a partnership model will look for microinsurance underpinned by commercial microwave links? How do you imagine turning this into a sustainable business model?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. I guess we always have to look beyond the technology for the value. So specifically for the insurance, and also let me clarify, I think there is, we're really in early days of what the potential use cases could be. And, microinsurance and another one, which is we're quite interested in malaria prevention, are some of the early opportunities we see, but they could be quite a number of use cases. But coming back specifically to the insurance and microinsurance, whether index-based weather solutions have become quite popular for many reasons. I mean, one, there is a huge number of small-scale farmers in some of these countries and geographies, and it's the most practical and pragmatic way I think they found to provide insurance products was to use weather measurement patterns or variables rather than having in-field assessments, because it would probably be very difficult, effective, and costly. If you look at the current index-based models or products, and if you look at the weather measurement or the weather gauge or measurement systems they use, whether it be satellites or gauges, they take into account quite a wide geographical area. So let me simplify that. If they subdivide the country into certain square areas, and they estimate that if it rains within this specific area, or we have rain data for this specific area, we'll pay out insurance to the farmers who had covered their capital against adverse conditions for rain. The challenge with that is that if you have a country that has a lot of microclimate, it could be raining here and it could be dry about 300 meters from a specific location. If you have to pay out a sum of premiums using approximating for a large area, you sometimes pay out a lot of premiums where they have not probably had any damage or effect. If we can bring down that spatial resolution to a very low level or very high accuracy, you can be a little bit more accurate in predicting which parts of the community or which parts of the geography have been impacted by weather conditions. And of course, that means that you could be a lot more accurate in your premium distribution, and which makes it the insurance product a lot more cost effective. I think also if you're a lot more accurate, based on a lot more accurate data for weather, you can also encourage farmers to take the product, because insurance in emerging markets is not just a top priority product, if I can put it that way. Farmers will probably think that they have a lot of other urgent priorities, and they could just hope for the best and hope that the weather conditions will not affect the product. And so you're also trying to find a way to incentivize or to show that there is value for the product. And so we think that we would probably be able to give a lot of savings to the insurance companies, but also we think we could encourage a lot more farmers to take the insurance product. And if you do that, you have the higher ability to protect the capital investment and the agricultural yield. So there is adverse economic benefits, and the immediate business case would be that the product itself would pay the savings or the savings and premium payout can pay for the data or the cost of running the solution. And that's just a simplistic business model. I think there could be quite a few other ways of looking at it. I don't know if that answers the question.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a really interesting perspective. Thank you so much for joining us today. We wanted to, in the interest of time, I think quickly take a few questions that we've had come in from the audience, and maybe there might be some for Edgar as well. But Daniele, do you want to lead on the questions?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Edgar, for your contribution. It's really great to see what you're doing on with microlinks and thinking about digital weather index insurance. We've had a few questions. I think there is one that is interesting and it's related to the use of microlinks information or data to create better weather forecasts, which is one of the opportunities or the use cases that we identified before. So really how this data can help improve the quality of weather forecasts. So the question is, if I am an MNO with this kind of signal attenuation data from microlinks, how far away am I from having a weather forecast? So I think the answer to that is that this is not a core competency for an MNO. We are not suggesting that MNOs should develop their own weather forecast or should invest in creating these kind of services. And I think what we're saying here is that there is an opportunity for MNOs really to generate value from this existing data that they have, expose this data to third parties who can then add value to this data and improve the services that they can offer. So there is an opportunity for MNOs to expose this data to third parties, these third parties to then provide services to end users. If it's, for example, an independent commercial weather company, it can be IBM, the weather company, this kind of weather companies, weather information providers that can develop specialized products or even products reaching the mass market and smallholder farmers community. They can make good use of this data. So for the MNO, there is this opportunity to expose this data to third parties and generate revenue from that. Or if as an MNO you already are providing value-added services and content for rural communities or for farmers, the work that we've done, as we mentioned before, in the past few years has been around supporting MNOs in providing value-added services, including weather information to the rural market. Then, of course, you can use this data to add value to the current services that you are already offering as an MNO. But again, in offering these services, still an MNO would be partnering with a third party who has the competency and the skill set to create these products. Another question that we had was around the cost of automated weather stations. What is the cost?
Daniel, you can ask them to come to Ericsson. We can help them with Ericsson with the data.
Thank you. So we have another question around the cost of automated weather stations. What is the cost range? Yeah, there has been a lot of innovation in weather stations. Here what we're saying is that essentially mobile IoT and big data and mobile operator assets can really contribute to improve weather forecasting. And an automated weather station is just an IoT and mobile IoT and big data technology and application. The cost has been decreasing over the past few years. There are low-cost weather stations that are under $10,000. So it's rapidly decreasing. I think one key point to take into account, obviously, here is standardization of weather stations and the ability of these weather stations to create data that is usable by third parties to create a good weather forecast. And weather monitoring is absolutely fundamental. So having these accurate weather measurements, be it through physical weather stations located on the ground, or through commercial microwave links, so using the approach that we just presented, is absolutely critical to create a good weather forecast. So yeah, the cost is decreasing, the cost of sensors is decreasing, but standardization is something to take into account to make sure that this data is usable by third parties. So here we have to interact with national meteorological agencies as private sector, let's say MNOs or private weather companies, must interact and collaborate with the public sector, with national meteorological agencies and the World Meteorological Organization to make sure that this data is usable. The key point I think to make here is that there is such a scarcity of ground level measurements in developing countries, particularly in certain developing countries. So there is a huge need to have accurate ground level measurements. So I would say that also from our perspective, from what we've seen, to having some kind of data is better than having no data at all. So certainly having this decreasing costs and these developments in technology that are allowing us to have much more flexible ways and much more lower cost technologies to extract this weather data from the ground is fundamental. So I think we probably have run out of time. We're also aware that we started a little later, so apologies for keeping you waiting for a few minutes at the beginning, but I think we're just about within the hour for this webinar. We really appreciate your time. We hope that this webinar has been interesting and insightful. Thank you again, Edgar, for joining us from Uganda.
Look, it was a pleasure to be here, and please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and you can also share my contact with anybody on the webinar, and good luck with the work that you're doing. I need to drop off now. It was a pleasure to join today.
Thank you, Edgar. So from me and Jenny, it's all. Thank you. For me and Jenny, that's all. Please contact us. You have our contact details here in this last slide, and we are keen to hear from you should you have any follow-up questions or you want to continue the conversation.